I'm making this video in my car because this is where the inspiration came, sort of. I've been thinking about this topic of the artistry of wounding for a little while. It really was the teaching that was coming forward when we were in Austin, and the feeling of everyone leading with their woundedness. And so, we touched on that a little bit at the event in Austin, and that's lovely, and that's great. And there's more to it. There's absolutely more to it. How are my bangs this morning? My manager tells me that you can know a lot about what state I'm in based on the status of my bangs. So you tell me, what state are we in today? They're not too bad. I had a hat on all day yesterday while we were traveling home. So the artistry of wounding. And the thing about wounding is that wounding comes whenever it wants to come. And it is the exact same as art in that way, because art is an inspired action, and inspiration comes when inspiration wants to come. And you can ask anyone that you, like a traditional artist or not, because that's my whole jam, that everyone is an artist and that we all have artistry, that there's functional, technical artistry just the same way there is aesthetic, entertaining artistry. But you can ask anyone that when something hits, it just hits. And in this moment, I'm actually thinking about an interview that I saw, the Rap Radar interview that Drake did, a year or so ago. And one of the things he talks about is he was describing the way some song came together. It may have been God's plan or something of that nature. And he talks about how a lot of it is organic, that it's not really as controlled or rehearsed or whatever, because it's inspiration. It's the way things just come together. A certain person gives him a certain beat, or the circumstances force him to rush something out faster than he thought. But in that rushing, did he have the words that he needed to have? And that's inspiration, y'all. Inspiration means of spirit. So whatever your spirit is, whatever your relationship to spirit is, God, the universe, nature, Allah, I don't care what your spiritual persuasion is, but inspiration is of spirit. And so when we're talking about the artistry of wounding, keeping in mind that artistry is, an inspired action, an of spirit experience, wounding embodies and has the same conceptual components, meaning it hits when it hits. It drops in on us when it wants to drop in on us, end of story. And that shows up in a million and one different ways. So that shows up in the conversations that we're having with someone. That shows up in, the restaurant that we go to. It shows up in the news that we read. It shows up in, our coworkers' actions. It shows up in the weather. Like, we can feel wounded based on any set of circumstances. We can experience our woundedness no matter what is going on. And when it hits, it hits. And as a people, particularly Western culture, we're real linear, we're real tight, we are real categorical. We really need to know fucking everything. We need to know why, we need to know where it belongs, we need to know what to do. We as an American people do not leave room for the mystery. We do not leave room, period, for the artistry of spirit to exist, for the artistry of universal forces and cosmic energies and all the underlying components of what we are actually all made up of. We don't leave room for that shit. And it gets us into trouble a lot. So when your wounding shows up, it shows up. I will go so far as to say, most likely it's always going to feel inconvenient. It's always going to feel like you don't have time for this. You can't show up for this. It's getting in the way. You know, it is what it is. And what's so interesting about it is that when inspiration that we deem positive, such as a song, you know, the beat for God's plan, or like, you know, which actually that's a funny reference as I'm saying that, like the title of the song is so apropos, and it's quite the, you know, metaphorical, tongue-in-cheek kind of thing, you know, because again, utilizing the term God for spirit and for the inspired action that occurs in our lives, all of our lives, whether you ascribe to it or not. You know, the wounding is part of God's plan too. You know, the inspiration of something hitting when it hits, that's, you know, God's plan. So that's just, I mean, whatever, that's an aside. Good job with the title. It's great. Good job, Aubrey. I went all way off track. Wounding is always going to feel inconvenient. However, when it hits, and we have to allow it to hit. Just because we have deemed wounding and pain and, you know, feeling triggered, trauma, all these other things, we have deemed them problematic, doesn't mean that they are any less necessary or inspired and or helpful to our journey. They absolutely are. They absolutely are. And if anything, you know, they provide sometimes more value. And that was something that we did talk about at the event in Austin, at the, you know, the ceremony that we did, is that we tend to learn more from our challenges than our easy breezy, beautiful, you know, windfalls. So why on earth are we always so jammed up about the fact that, you know, I'm being triggered right now? My wounding is coming forward right now. Why is that a problem for us? You know, why do we try and push that away, but yet hunger insatiably for the windfall and the ease and the joy and the laughter? It's all part of the same experience of living. It's all part of the same engagement. And really the available end game for us is that we can be in love with all aspects of our process. We can be in love, and I've made videos about this, and I've talked about this in various states and places, but we can be in love with our pain. We can be deeply in relationship and feel a sense of gratitude and feel extremely connected, excuse me, feel extremely connected while we're sobbing our eyes out, like moving through childhood trauma. Because truly, how much more connected can you get to yourself than allowing such big emotion and energetic expression to move through you as does when you are healing from your trauma? And when you are in a space of woundedness, you know, your trauma is attempting to be healed. The, you know, knotted up energetic frequency of wounding, of trauma, is trying to be worked out. And it's a dance. It is a dance to be attentive to that wounding and then like take a breath and not let yourself get overwhelmed and feel like you're gonna die or you'll never be healed, that nothing will ever change, and to not go off the deep end in that way. And then to go into it and feel all the way so that you don't ignore it or stuff it or avoid it, and then to come out of it. I mean, we're going in and out of that darkness always. That's the movement of the infinity symbol. We're in, we're out, we're in, we're out. And that's a dance, and that's artistry. And we are in and out of that wounded artistry within ourselves. We're in and out of it with each other, within the relationships that we have. We're just in and out of it always. And so the dance of wounding, the artistry of wounding, it hits when it hits. And I hope And I invite you to allow your inspiration, your of spirit action, however it shows up. I invite you to welcome it and dance with it, move with it, and not run yourself ragged or talk a whole bunch of shit. Engaging in those old narratives that say now is not the time. Because if it's showing up, it is the time. And that's God's plan. I love you so much.